Hello, everybody, and welcome back to my continuation of my book reading of Shawshank Redemption. That's how, on the second to last day of the job, the convict crew that tarred the plate factory roof in 1950 ended up sitting in a row at 10 o'clock on the spring morning, drinking black label beer supplied by the hardest crew that ever walked a turn at Shawshank Prison. That beer was piss warm, but it was still the best I have ever had in my life. We sat and drank it, and I felt the sun on our shoulders. And not even the expression of half amusement, half contempt on Hadley's face, as if he was watching apes drink beer instead of men, could spoil it. It lasted 20 minutes, that beer break, and for those 20 minutes we felt like free men. We could have been drinking beer and tarring the roof of one of our own houses. Only Andy didn't drink. I already told you about his drinking habit. He sat hunkered down in the shade, hands dangling between his knees, watching us and smiling a little. It's amazing how many men remember him that way, and amazing how many men were on that work crew when Andy Dufresne faced down Byron Hadley. I thought there were 9 or 10 of us, but by 1955, there must have been 200 of us. Maybe even more, if you believed what you heard. So yeah, if you ask me to give you a flat out answer to the question of whatever I'm trying to tell you about a man or a legend that got made up around a man like a pearl around a little piece of grit, I have to say that the answer lies somewhere in between, and all I know for sure is that Andy Dufresne wasn't much like me or anyone else I ever knew since I came inside. He brought in $500 jammed up his back porch, but somehow that grave meat son of a bitch managed to bring in something else as well. A sense of his own worth, maybe, or a feeling that he would be the winner in the end. Or maybe it was only a sense of freedom, even inside these goddamn grey walls. It was a kind of inner light he carried around with him. I only knew him to lose that light once, and that is also part of this story. By World Series time of 1950, this was the year Bobby Thompson hit his famous home run at the end of the season, you will remember, and he was having no more trouble from the sisters. Thomas and Hadley had passed the word if Andy Dufresne came to either of them or any of the other screws that formed a part of their coterie and showed so much as a single drop of blood in his underpants, every sister in Shawshank would go to bed that night with a headache. They didn't fight it. As I have pointed out, there was always an 18-year-old car thief or firebug or some guy who got in his kicks handling little children. After the day on the plate shop roof, Andy went his way and the sisters went theirs. He was working in the library then, under a tough old con named Brooks. Brooks had gotten the job back in the late 20s because he had a college education. Brooks's degree was in animal husbandry. True enough, but college education in institutes of lower learning like the Shank are so rare that it's a case of beggars not being able to be choosers. In 1952, Brooksy, who had killed his wife and daughter after a losing streak at poker back when Coolidge was president, was paroled. As usual, the state in all its wisdom had to let him go long after any chance he might have had to become a useful part of society was gone. He was 68 when he tottered out the main gate in his Polish suit and his French shoes, his parole papers in one hand and a Greyhound bus ticket in the others. He was crying when he left. Shawshank was his world. What lay beyond its walls was as terrible to Brooks as the western seas had been to superstition 13th century sailors. In prison, Brooksy had been a person of some importance. He was a head librarian, an educated man. If he went to the Kittery Library and asked for a job, they wouldn't give him a library card. I heard he died in a home for indecent old folks up Freeport Way in 1952. And at that, he lasted about 6 months longer than I thought he would. Yeah, I guess the state got its own back on Brooksy, alright. They trained him to like it inside the shithouse, and then they threw him out. And they succeeded to Brooksy's job, and he was head librarian for 23 years. He used the same force of will I'd seen him use on Byron Hadley to get what he wanted to the library, and I saw him gradually turn one small room, which still smelled of turpentine because it had been in paint, closed until 1922 and had never been properly aired, lined with Reader's Digest, condensed books, and National Geographics, into the best prison library in New England. He did it a step at a time. He put a suggestion box by the door and patiently weeded out such attempts at humor as "More fuck box, please," and "Escape in 10 easy lesions." He got hold of the things the prisoners seemed serious about. He wrote to 3 major book clubs in New York and got 2 of them, the Literary Guild and the Book of the Month Club, to send editions of all their major selections to us at a special cheap rate. He discovered a hunger for information on such small hobbies as soap carving, woodworking, sleight of hand, and card solitaire. He got all the books he could on such subjects. And those 2 jailhouse staples, Earl Stanley Gardner and Louis L'Amour, Collins never seemed to get enough of the courtroom or the open range. And yes, he did keep a box of fairly spicy paperbacks under the checkout desk, blowing them out carefully and making sure they always got back. Even so, each new inquisition of that type was quickly read to tatters. He began to write to the state senate in Augusta in 1954. Thomas was warned by then, and he used to pretend Andy was some sort of mascot. He was always in the library shooting the bull with Andy, and sometimes he'd even throw a paternal arm around Andy's shoulder or give him a goose. He didn't fool anybody. Andy Dufresne was no one's mascot. He told Andy that maybe he'd been a banker on the outside, but that part of his life was receding rapidly into his past, and he had better get a hold on the facts of prison life. As far as that bunch of jumped up Republican Rotarians in Augusta was concerned, there were only 3 viable expenditures of the taxpayers' money in the field of prisons and corrections. Number 1 was more walls, number 2 was more bars, and number 3 was more guards. As far as the state senate was concerned, Thomas explained the folks in Thomaston and Shawshank and Pitchfields and South Portland were the scum of the earth. They were there to do hard time, and by God and Sonny Jesus, it was hard time they were going to do. And if there were a few weevils in the bread, wasn't that just too fucking bad? Andy smiled his small, composed smile and asked Thomas what would happen to a block of concrete if a drop of water fell on it every year for 1,000,000 years. Thomas laughed and clapped Andy on the back. "You got no 1,000,000 years, old horse. But if you did, I believe you'd do it with that same little grin on your face. You go on and write your letters. I'll even mail them for you if you pay for the stamps. Which Andy did. And he had the last laugh, although Stamets and Hadley weren't around to see it. Andy's requests for library funds were routinely turned down until 1960, when he received a check for $200. The Senate probably appropriated it in hopes that he would shut up and go away. Vain hopes. Andy felt that he had finally gotten one foot in the door, and he simply redoubled his efforts. 2 letters a week instead of 1. In 1962, he got $400, and for the rest of the decade, the library received $700 a year like clockwork. By 1971, that had risen to an even $1,000, not much stacked up against what your average small-town library receives. I guess about $1,000 can buy a lot of recycled Perry Mason stories and Jake Logan westerns. By the time Andy left, you could go into the library, expand it from its original paint locker to 3 rooms, and find just about anything you want. And if you couldn't find it, chances were good that Andy could get it for you. And with this, I'm going to end it here for this part of the book reading. Thank you so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you. Bye-bye.